The year was 2147, and Earth had become a shadow of its former self. The skies were perpetually gray, choked with the remnants of industrial greed and environmental collapse. Humanity clung to survival in sprawling megacities encased within massive domes, shielded from the toxic atmosphere outside. But even inside these sanctuaries, life was far from ideal. Resources were scarce, power was concentrated in the hands of an elite few, and hope was a rare commodity. Amidst this bleak existence, there existed one man who refused to bow to despair. His name was Captain Elias Voss, a grizzled veteran of the United Earth Defense Force, UEDF. Once celebrated as a hero for his role in repelling alien invasions, Elias now lived as a recluse on the fringes of New Chicago Dome, eking out a living by salvaging scrap metal and repairing broken drones. He bore the scars of countless battles, both physical and emotional, but what set him apart was his unyielding defiance. While others whispered about surrender or submission to their fate, Elias stood firm. Humanity would endure. It began with a transmission. Elias was tinkering with a busted surveillance drone when the static-filled message crackled through his receiver. At first, he thought it was interference, a common occurrence in the electromagnetic soup that surrounded the domes. But then words emerged, faint but unmistakable. To any survivors, this is Commander Lyra Solon of the UEDF outpost. Epsilon, if you can hear this, we need your help. Elias froze. Outpost Epsilon? That station had been abandoned decades ago after a catastrophic failure during the first skirmish against the Zetherians, an insectoid species bent on harvesting organic matter to fuel their hive-mind empire. Rumors claimed the outpost had been overrun, its defenses obliterated, and its crew assimilated into the hive. No one dared venture near it since. But something about Lyra's voice pierced through Elias's skepticism. It wasn't just desperation, it was determination. She sounded alive and fighting. He grabbed his gear without hesitation. Whatever awaited him at Outpost Epsilon, he couldn't ignore a call for help, not while there was still breath in his lungs. The journey to the outskirts of the dome was perilous. Beyond the protective barrier lay a wasteland teeming with mutated creatures born of radiation and genetic decay. Elias navigated the terrain in his battered rover, armed with a plasma rifle strapped to his back and a combat knife sheathed at his side. The air outside was thick with ash, forcing him to rely on his helmet's filtration system to breathe. As he approached the coordinates broadcasted in the transmission, the silhouette of Outpost Epsilon loomed ahead, a jagged monolith, jutting out of the barren landscape like a broken tooth. Its once pristine walls were now scorched and crumbling, evidence of the brutal conflict that had taken place here years ago. Yet despite its dilapidated state, the outpost emitted a faint hum of activity. Elias parked the rover a safe distance away and proceeded on foot, his boots crunching over shards of glass and twisted metal. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of the weight of his equipment, but because of the dread coiling in his gut. He knew the Zetherians hadn't given up this territory willingly. Whatever or whoever was inside, they were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Inside the outpost, the scene was chaos frozen in time. Desks were overturned, terminals smashed, and walls smeared with dried blood. But amidst the destruction, signs of recent occupation were clear. Fresh boot prints in the dust, makeshift barricades reinforced with scrap metal, and flickering lights powered by jury-rigged generators. Elias followed the trail deeper into the facility until he reached the central command room. There, he found her. Commander Lyra Solon was crouched behind a barricade of crates, her armor dented and scorched, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. In her hand, she clutched a pulse pistol, its charge nearly depleted. Surrounding her were 3 other soldiers, each looking equally battered but resolute. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded, raising her weapon cautiously as Elias entered the room. "Captain, Elias Voss," he replied, lowering his rifle. "I heard your distress signal." For a moment, suspicion lingered in her eyes, but then recognition dawned. "Voss? The guy who held off the Zetherian swarm at New Berlin? What the hell are you doing here?" "Same thing you are," Elias said grimly. "Surviving." Lyra nodded, lowering her pistol. "We've been trapped here for weeks. The Zetherians cut us off from reinforcements, and our comms have been spotty at best. We managed to hold them back, but—" She trailed off, glancing at the bodies of fallen comrades draped in tattered sheets nearby. "But what?" Elias pressed. "They're adapting," she admitted. "Their tactics, their weapons, they keep evolving. And now—" She hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're using humans." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Before Lyra could answer, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A low, guttural growl echoed through the corridors, growing louder with each passing second. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances, gripping their weapons tightly. "They're coming," one of them muttered. Elias moved to the nearest window, peering out into the darkness. What he saw chilled him to the bone. Dozens of Zetherian drones scuttled across the wasteland, their exoskeletons gleaming under the pale moonlight. But worse still were the figures interspersed among them. Humans, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their movements jerky and mechanical. They weren't captives. They were puppets, controlled by the hive mind. "This ends tonight," Elias declared, turning back to the group. "We fight." The battle was fierce and unrelenting. The Zetherians swarmed the outpost, their numbers overwhelming. But Elias and the remaining defenders fought with everything they had. Pulse rifles blazed, grenades detonated, and blades flashed in the dim light. For every enemy they felled, 2 more took its place. At one point, Elias found himself face to face with one of the puppet soldiers, a young woman whose vacant gaze sent shivers down his spine. Her movements were eerily precise, her strikes calculated and relentless. He dodged her attacks, searching for an opening, but every blow he landed seemed to have no effect. It wasn't until he noticed the small device embedded in her neck, a neural implant, that he realized the truth. With a swift motion, he yanked the device free. The woman collapsed, her body convulsing before going still. Though she didn't survive, Elias felt a flicker of hope. If he could disable the implants, he could free the others. Working together, the team devised a plan. Using EMP grenades scavenged. From the outpost armory, they targeted groups of puppet soldiers, disabling their implants en masse. One by one, the humans fell, freed from the hive mind's control, but too damaged to recover. By dawn, the Zetherians had retreated, their forces decimated. The outpost was in ruins, but the defenders had prevailed at great cost. Only Elias, Lyra, and one other soldier remained standing. As the sun rose over the desolate horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Elias stared out at the wreckage. He thought of all the lives lost, all the sacrifices made. But he also thought of those who had fought alongside him, refusing to yield even when the odds seemed insurmountable. "Why do we keep fighting?" Lyra asked quietly, joining him. "Even when it feels hopeless?" Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gazed at the horizon, where the faintest hint of blue peeked through the clouds. "Because we're human," he said finally. "And humanity doesn't submit." Together, they turned their backs on the carnage and began the long walk home, carrying with them the promise of tomorrow and the unbreakable spirit of a species that refused to give up.